Hey everybody, this is Sean Bagby, once again coming with you for the HET podcast. We're going to do something a little different today and not interview an educator. And I'm actually really excited to have this conversation. So first off, I want to introduce you to Tyler York. I'll let Tyler give his credentials and where he's coming from, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you. Really excited to be here. Yeah, so I'm the founder and CEO of Achievable, and we're a modern test prep company that uses technology to help people pass their what we call opportunity gating exams, which are usually things that stand in between you and a job or a career, or in other cases, things like, going to college or grad school. Really excited to be here. I guess how much of my background do you want me to share? Like, do you want me to
Well,
do like the bio or what do you
yeah,
want what do you
no,
want to
that
do?
that that's perfect, man. That information was perfect there. That so the first question I always ask everyone that comes on here is, what's your educational background? So that's going to be my next question for you, is just what is your educational background to start with?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough as a kind of a bullheaded teenager to get into Phillips Exeter Academy. So I went to high school there and as I joke that I peaked in high school, but from there I went to Carnegie Mellon University where I studied marketing and entrepreneurship. And that was also where I met my co-founder, Justin Pinkar, who studied human computer interaction and computer science there. From there, yeah, so that's, I guess, my main educational background. I mean, I think that, Exeter taught me how to sort of think critically and debate people, both of which have been very useful. And then Carnegie Mellon taught me a lot about entrepreneurship and also just like how to work. I think Carnegie Mellon's motto is "My heart is in the work," and so everybody comes out of there with a little bit of a workaholic complex. But that's why people like to hire us, I guess. So
No, it's hilarious because Carnegie Mellon was actually on my undergrad list. So that was
nice.
yeah. So that was one of them that I chose. I ended up staying at University of Evansville, but Carnegie Mellon was the one I thought about going to the most, and actually uh, almost went to. That's interesting.
Cool.
Never would have thought of that. First person I've ever got to interview from there.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, that's great. So can you kind of give us a little bit of background on your company, and like how did you guys get into the idea of helping to prepare students or professionals about to take their board exams or licensure exams to pass these tests?
Yeah, so we Achievable was founded a decade ago almost. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary. And we originally got started because Justin, my co-founder, we remained good friends after college. Also, while we were in college and right after college, we started a couple of companies together. They didn't really go anywhere, but we always wanted to keep in touch. And his career took him to Google, and then he was like the founding engineer or architect at multiple ed tech companies. I actually went into marketing for the video game industry for a good amount of time. And then around 2016, he reached out to me because he had been learning Japanese in his spare time. And one of the things that he noticed was this learning method called space repetition, which was really popular in that community. And space repetition, if you're not familiar with it, is basically a learning method that you can use to train your brain to remember things. And it has been proven by psychology researchers. It was actually originally developed by someone named Ebbinghaus in the late 1800s, but it wasn't until the 70s and 80s with computers that it really became practical because it's a lot of sort of like timeline and data management and adjustments based on lots of different things. So you can think of it to oversimplify it as like a stack of flashcards that you're sorting into piles depending on how well you know what's on that flashcard. But the application of it in modern test prep programs, of which not very many use spaced repetition, but we're one of the biggest ones that does, is doing it with actual active assessments. So it's not just like, what's the definition of this and then flip the card over. It's actually asking you real questions that you have to answer. And so that's proven extremely effective. Basically, spaced review in psychology studies has been proven to be about 50% more effective, both from an actual outcome point of view in terms of how well you remember the material, and then also from a time efficiency point of view, it's about 50% more effective there as well. So Justin being really deep into the ed tech world was like, I don't understand why there isn't a test prep platform that is built around this. And so that was the genesis of Achievable. We then started out in the financial licensure market, which is something called the Series 7 exam, which basically it turns out that stockbrokers need licenses in order to sell you stock. It's one of the main reasons why the stock market's a lot more legit now and why you see a lot of very kind of weird and shady stuff going on in crypto is because crypto doesn't have those rules yet. But these are the main rules that, mean that stockbrokers have to act ethically and they can't, Wolf of Wall Street you into losing your house. And so that was where we got started. We've been very successful in that world. And then from there, we've expanded quite a bit into a number of different areas. One of the first ones we expanded into was the medical prep space. Um, Medical school students have been using spaced repetition for a really long time, actually. They're one of the largest groups outside of hardcore language learners and like people like Jeopardy contestants that use spaced repetition. And so we felt like that was a natural fit. We started with the USMLE Step 1, and then we've expanded to include things like the NPTE, PTA. We're also building a PT course that's going to be on the way probably early next year. And then we were also, doing a bunch of other medical things like the PTCE and XCPT exams for pharmacy technicians and stuff like that. And it's all kind of built around the same premise, which is that we are going to train you via this software program to learn everything and remember everything that you need to pass this test. And we have really, really high success rates in the financial space of 95% or higher pass rates. And so that's our goal is to kind of bring that to these medical prep markets as well.
Wow, that's really interesting and quite different from what we're used to in physical therapy as far as an educational design. And I really appreciate the idea and the look at that. With that being said, excuse me if I don't choke myself first. As you are getting into the physical therapy world, what have been like some of the interesting things you've seen or observed so far in your preparation of the program to go live and as it's starting to go through that initial phase?
Yeah, so I mean, we did a lot of research into this market before we decided to build a course because building a course is expensive and time consuming, right? And I mean, the biggest things that we've noticed, first off, is that like there isn't a prep program that has the same sort of like technology and space repetition first approach with adaptive learning like ours. And that's something that I feel like this field deserves. I think that, essentially because our platform does all these things that, personalizing your study plan, identifying your weak areas, and automatically rescheduling things so that you're studying them more, reinforcing these concepts of space repetition. I think that we can raise some of that like pass rate gap that's been a problem, especially recently with, right? Like I know that pass rates have been a little bit of a struggle. They used to be really high kind of nationally, and now they've started to come down in the last, call it 5 years since COVID. The second thing I think is that, we've identified that there's a lot of these like university programs that are looking for a more modern experience. And then just as far as like the individuals, I think that there are some really good prep programs out there, right? Like that I've seen. But a lot of them are not built for kind of how learners live today. Like our courses are primarily focused on being able to be studied in short bursts, like 5 to 10 minutes while you're like on the bus or at your lunch break. You can study on your phone, or you can study kind of out in the world, however you want, or you can study on your computer. A lot of these courses that already exist are really instructive, but it requires that you sit down and watch a video for 45 minutes, and that is hard to fit into people's schedules nowadays. And then it's just kind of our mission in general to get more involved in healthcare. I think that it's one of the most important areas where, licensure is a big barrier to a lot of people getting jobs. And sort of our mission basically is to help everybody achieve their dreams, achievable, achieve. But that's an area where I felt like we could do a lot of good. So.
No, I appreciate that. And one of the things I've heard you talk about before that I'd like you to kind of hit on a little bit that you kind of were starting there is like your process is a little different. So how does that work in tandem with say a student that had to go through a school-based another program? What is the advantage of like your program on top of that? Or after, we talk about lower pass rates after failing the first board exam.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's actually probably the biggest thing that we could help with is there's been a bit of a gap between like the learning and the licensure part of it, where like there's all these providers are doing great classroom instruction and that's building competence. But then there's sort of like a lack of translating that into test prep readiness for the specific test. Right. And essentially, I think like most things in the world, right? I certainly felt this way about some of my marketing exams. Um, there's a difference between what you need to know to pass the test and like what you're actually going to use in your job. And I think that the schools are really good at teaching the what you're actually going to use in your job, which makes a ton of sense because a lot of these people are former, PTs or have experience with that. So this is really meant to be kind of like a focused sort of digital boot camp for just getting you to get set on the test stuff and pass that test so you can go on to the job that you were trained for.
That's awesome. As this marketplace kind of evolves, where do you see the testing structure for boards and things like that? What do you see the next evolution of that being in not just necessarily the educational space, but in the licensure space? Do you see changes in exams that you've noticed with like being involved in the Series 7 over 10 years? Are there changes that have evolved in a lot of the national board exams that you've noticed?
To be honest with you, like not really actually. I think that the NPTE has evolved quite a bit recently. That's something that we thought was interesting about it and potentially an opportunity. Um, I actually no, I take that back a little bit. So I mean the financial exams, the FINRA is the name of the licensure board for finance. They actually took one of their biggest problems, which was like a lot of their tests covered the same stuff and also they were really big. And they like chopped all of it out and created an entry level exam called the FINRA SIE. That was a really good idea. And then I think, the other thing is that they're letting people take that test from home. So I think that there's like some modernization going on in a lot of these tests that I do think is, moving things in the right direction. I also would say that generally speaking, though, the content hasn't changed that much, which is where the NPTE is a little different. The NPTE seems to have a lot more change of content over time. And particularly like the types of questions that you guys are asking, right? Like image and video based questions, which we're adding to the course because, we found we're basically like, okay, this is a much bigger part of the PTA exam than we originally thought. There's a lot that I think is really good that the NPTE is doing to basically, I think, have one of the more modern exams that we work with right now.
That's interesting. Um, as as you start dipping into this, how is this is just something that kind of interests me. What is like the timetable from like you're deciding we're going to go into the medical, start into the medical field. We're going to pick out like just say the NPTE. As we start there, how long does it take you to really build a product out and get one out to the public?
Yeah, so we've been in the medical space actually since 2019. That was when we launched our USMLE course. But in terms of like for the NPTE specifically, basically we do usually probably like a month of research kind of to determine if it's worth building.
Mhm.
And then from there, we go out and we essentially look to hire experts in the field that are looking for this kind of work. A lot of them are tutors, sometimes they're, university educators or people like that. And so they have a lot of experience with the material and specifically with the test. And then we build the course with them. That can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months, depending on the course and also depending on the author that we choose because they all vary, right? And kind of like how fast they are or like how thorough they are and things like that. And we then what we do is we go back around and we basically do a whole second pass with a different set of authors and editors. So there's almost like two course productions. There's like the initial draft, and then we have a different person do a whole second draft essentially to make sure that that first person didn't make any mistakes or have anything that maybe was missing or things like that. Then we put it all together in the course platform and then release it from there. So the whole process kind of takes about, let's say, a year.
Okay. That's good. What about like and we kind of talked about like the MPT evolves and changes, especially over time.
Mhm.
How do you try to stay with that curve or ahead of that curve?
Yeah, so those people that we work with to build the course are not going anywhere when the course is done. We continue working with them for years, typically, to continue to keep the course up to date. And also, there's like two aspects of this, right? The first is the obvious aspect, which is that if there are obvious changes to the content announced by the NPTE organization, things like that, like those are obviously things that we are going to do. But also something that I think gives us kind of a unique leg up on other people, maybe, is the fact that we are constantly soliciting feedback from our customers about it. So whenever you use Achievable's course, we have a built-in study planner thing, and you set your test date, and then it gives you what you need to do. And then basically at the end of this, when it's past your test date and you log in, we're going to say, hey, how did you do? Did you pass? What was the things that went well? What were the things that didn't go well? What are like, were there any questions that you saw that you felt like we didn't cover well enough? Like things like that. And so we get tons of feedback from that. And we make hundreds of updates to all of our courses every month based on that. So it's kind of like a continuous improvement point of view.
Cool. That's really unique. I like that. One of the things that I would say when I look at your product, there's really two markets, right? There's the student that's going to use it, and then I think there's a professorial use where professors are going to try to bake this into their programs in order to help because pass rate is so important to PT and PTA educators as far as credential or as far as CAPTE accreditation and things like that.
Mhm.
So as you're kind of looking at those two different markets, how do you what's the one thing you want each of those groups to get out from knowing this product exists? So I guess from the students first.
Yeah, I mean, from the students first, and I mean, luckily the answer kind of overlaps with both,
Yeah.
but I think that the critical thing that we provide is like structure during the least structured phase of the process. Because after you finish your coursework and you're doing clinicals and things like that, you're just kind of thrown into studying on your own a lot of the time. Like some universities will have sort of like a guided like study program, but I haven't heard that they're always great. And a lot of times it's like you're doing stuff in class, but then you've also got to do stuff on your own at home. And we provide a significant amount of structure for that because we're built as a self-serve course for individuals. So almost every, like, our business to business side and our finance is growing a lot, but we started out being entirely just like individuals coming to us looking to study something that they just weren't getting what they needed from what their company was already buying for them. And so that's where I think we are going to be really helpful is like, we have the study planner, which is going to tell you exactly what you're doing every day. We have a really simple UI that's just like, this is what you're doing next. And also, here's what you need to review. And then all the reviews and the things like that are all structured in a way where we're basically using that space repetition algorithm to surface to you the most relevant things for you at the right time. So that's really like the whole pitch for that. It's giving you a lot of structure and basically the idea is that we're trying to take away this sort of question mark with studying of like, what do I do now? Right?
Right.
And making it so that you are able to just like show up and we're telling you what to do and you're going through it and then you pass.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, I can answer on like the
Yeah,
professorial side.
I
Yeah.
definitely from a program perspective, I definitely would like to hear where your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so on the program side, like first and foremost, we're providing that structure to all the students. That's really helpful for them. But then we have another layer on top that basically is what we call like the instructor dashboard and like manager experience. So as an instructor, we're going to give you a dashboard of everybody that your students essentially like need like all of your students in your classes, and you can have as many classes in different groups as you want, and it'll tell you whether they're on track or off track, how much of the work that they've done, how things are looking as far as their most recent exam scores. And you can do things like impersonate a user if you want to go look at what their account looks like. You could have it, there's, a detailed analytics report that includes a ton of data on like their strengths and weaknesses across the content, what they've been doing as far as activities, how much time they've spent reading each chapter, because it turns out that a lot of people will just skim stuff and not really critically read it. And then so as the teacher, you can actually, with not very much time, pick out who are the people that, I need to get on and what do I need to get on them about. And then that will just help you improve your pass rates over time that way. Um, Essentially, like all the same things that work for financial licensure and all the other exams that we do, the same principles apply here.
That's awesome. I love that as an instructor. I love the fact that like we can go in and look at how much time is spent, and then that also give us a great ability to look and see it like where are our strengths and weaknesses as professors? Where are we teaching content that they're not getting? Because then obviously they're not having the basis once it's reviewed through another system to pass that information yet. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing that portion of it. Um, so as we close up, I've got a
Mhm.
question, and this is usually directed solely towards physical therapy education, but I'm actually quite interested to hear your answer. What is the one thing that you would change in the professional prep educational system right now? What's the one thing you see across the board that we either spend too much time or not enough time on?
Yeah, I mean, I have a strong opinion about this. And I'm not trying to make this whole thing like an advertisement, but like it's a core reason why Achievable exists, which is basically that these tests are, in most cases, you're learning a lot of important stuff, but they are like a thing that it's a box you need to check, right? And for so many people, like if you just have a few $1,000s and you hire a tutor to walk you through it, you'll for sure pass, right? But most people don't have that kind of money. And so the idea behind Achievable, and part of the reason why also we kind of try to keep our prices on the lower side, is that our goal is to level the playing field. If you think about, right now, education, you can basically pay for more success, right? If there is a lower cost option that is one of the highest quality options, then we've just like helped a lot of people where if they can make it to that price point, then, which I think for this course is $99, like they can get access to the same level of education that somebody else might have paid thousands of dollars for beforehand. And that I think is really important for just making the world a better place. Like I know that that's kind of a corny tech euphemism, but at the end of the day, you know, education is, I think, one of the most important things in the world today that, particularly in America, is not being prioritized enough. And I think that it is something that is going to become even more important with, technology accelerating all these different things and with AI and all this other stuff. Being able to, retrain yourself or train in a new profession and being able to have a reliable way to do that that doesn't, you know, it isn't reliant on you being super rich, I think is going to be really important because great education should be a right for everybody.
I couldn't have said it better, and I think that's a great place to end the interview today. Tyler, thank you so much. If you don't mind, I would like to have you or someone back from the company later on this year to talk about after you've gotten through one or two cohorts of students, what you've seen and how it's gone.
Yeah, would love that. Thank you so much.
All right, perfect. Thank you, and you have a great day, and we'll see you again on the next episode of the HET podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Happy to be here.